And in the interest of time, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move on to our next session on more part of the financial inclusion agenda. Let me tell you that the Honorable Secretary, Ministry of MSME, Shri B.B. Smine, is here with us already, and we are expecting the Honorable Minister to join us any time in between this session. That's also when we'll also give away the awards. So I will quickly invite to the stage our panelists for this session, starting with Shri Ashokumar Gupta, General Manager, MSME and Mid-Corporate Credit Division at Punjab National Bank, Mr. Arup Kumar, Chief General Manager, Sidbi Foundation for Micro Credit, Mr. M. Paramsivam, Chief General Manager at Canara Bank, Mr. Avnish Jain, Head of Transaction Banking at Indusland Bank, Mr. Kamdesh Gandhi, Founder Chairman and MD at MAS Financial Services Limited, Shri B. Gopalakrishna Samaga, Deputy General Manager and National Head at Karnataka Bank. And once again, I'll invite on stage, he already is here, Mr. Avinash Gupta, MD and CEO of Dun & Bradstreet Information Services India Private Limited. Requesting our speakers for the next session to now join us on the dais. We'll take just a couple of moments to make the necessary arrangements and the nameplates arranged. In the meanwhile, I will request our next set of speakers to join us on the dais. We already have with us the Honorable Secretary, Ministry of MSME, Shri B.B. Swine, who is now here at the venue. And like I said, the Honorable Minister, Shri Narayan Rane, will be joining us in this session. And that's when we will also give away the second set of awards and conclude at lunch. May I request everyone to please get settled. We will have ample time and opportunity for networking. We promise you there will be time for networking during the lunch time. In the meantime, may I request our speakers for this session, Mr. Ashokumar Gupta, Mr. Arup Kumar, Mr. M. Paramsivam, Mr. Avnish Jain, Mr. Kamdesh Gandhi, Mr. B. Gopalakrishna, to please join us on stage. Also the final session on more part of the financial inclusion agenda, and like I mentioned, the Honorable Minister Shri Rane will be joining us any time in between this session. We will give away the second set of awards, as you have all been eagerly waiting for, and we will be concluding our today's program at lunch. So once again, I request you all to please join me in welcoming Shri B.B. Swine, the Secretary, Ministry of MSME, Government of India. He's joining us now for this session. Let's welcome him with a round of applause. Shri B.B. Swine, Secretary, Ministry of MSME, Government of India, a very special guest for this session on more part of the financial inclusion agenda. And once again, I'll request you, Shri Avinash Gupta, to present a plant sapling, and on behalf of all of us here at ASSOCHAM, kindly welcome the Honorable Secretary. A symbol of growth and prosperity, this little plant sapling on behalf of all of us here at ASSOCHAM.
Invite Avinash Gupta to welcome.
Thank you. And Mr. Gupta, may I request you to kindly give the welcome address once again.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, I guess you are stuck with me twice over today, so apologies for that, but I'll try to say some new stuff as well. So I think the previous session was a little bit of, I guess, lots of good thoughts, but a little bit of rapid fire, and I hope you took something away from that. I think this session in terms of financial inclusion and the agenda and I guess the momentum and the gravitas it gives to everything, I think we guys are lucky that we have access to financial products, financial resources. The lack of that completely changes things a lot. So I think maybe some opening comments because I think again we are a little bit tight on time, so I'll keep my comments short. All the stats, and I'm sure a lot of my colleagues who are more in touch with day-to-day financial world and banking will definitely cover. The number of people who had a bank account or access to financial services substantially gone up in terms of stats, but is that real financial inclusion, and what does it take to really make it real financial inclusion? So at Dun & Bradstreet we do a lot of surveys, and only 8% or so of the MSMEs have access to formal credit in the country. And when we look at, averages across the world, those are much higher. If you look at Philippines, Vietnam, even the US and markets of those kind, the numbers are in the 20s. So much higher than, what people have here. And the simple rule around that is that those countries or people who have access to some sort of financial formal credit, their return on capital employed is just substantially higher. And I'll quote you some numbers, 19% and things of that kind. And really the spread is really the cost of capital, because you are borrowing at a proper bank rate rather than borrowing at a rate which, doesn't really add to the business. So I think that's the challenge we all know. And, there are some, hopefully, some things which are happening in the ecosystem which are driving change and driving progress. And that possibly are things around the fintech sector. And, again, the fintech sector is really, India is doing very well on that space. The number of fintechs created, the amount of, capital, and where we said capital drives everything, the amount of capital driving growth in that sector, driving change in the sector. Again, I can talk statistics, and again, maybe some of my other colleagues on the panel will also have similar statistics, so I'll leave it to them. But in terms of reduction of, customer acquisition costs reduced not by a couple of percentages, but reduced by 90%. Reduction in lending costs, not again by a couple of percentages, but I told you about the return on capital from 19% to 2%. Reduction in transaction cost, which is very, very important to banks. I mean, that's their bread and butter, their cost to income ratio. If they can get their transaction costs down, they make a substantial difference to their life. And obviously the time taken to, onboard a customer, do a KYC, do an AML, which is becoming more important. And I guess this whole crisis which is happening now is making even banks more aware of how to do that and be pertinent to doing that. So I think those are some of the good things which could happen, and there is an ecosystem to be built around that. I think in the previous thing, again, what came out is awareness, and awareness of programs, awareness of products. I think that even in our surveys, all the MSMEs complain about that. And I think despite there is a lot of education, but a lot more is needed around how you can be better financially included in the whole ecosystem. I think the couple of other things which we all talk about, and these are the surveys which we do in your sector, which point out is clearly the concerns you have around high emphasis on credit scores by financial institutions. Now, that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. I mean, there is a lot of alternate data available now, which if massaged, which if collected properly, which digested properly and analyzed properly, can give an equally good insight as to what's happening in the ecosystem, what's happening in each industry, and what's possibly happening in individual companies as well. In our country itself, there are few of us who can now triangulate data, as we call it, live data, GST data, bank data, bureau data, income tax data, and really we can do it using technology and come back to you in 10-15 minutes and give you a real picture on the business. And there is no reason why why everything has to be dependent on a credit score, which possibly is more static and really limits financing available to industries which are more dynamic. So that's one concern which we need to get over. Again, collateral requirement, and I know the Secretary and a lot of the webinars we've talked about the whole issue around collateral. In the previous opening session, we had the gentleman from Qualcomm and intellectual property. How do you value intellectual property, especially for services companies which really don't have hard assets? And those are things, again, which we need to get around, that can we move to a pure or a better value in terms of pure cash flow lending, which can help the ecosystem. I think things like, which are already in the works, the public credit registry, I think sooner the better from that point of view. Data being available at a price, but data then available so that you can take the information away and massage it and come back with an opinion on it. I think the other concern which everybody has around finance and financial inclusion clearly is the lack of being able to collect what's due to you, and then clearly the receivable situation, and you guys face it much more than we do as big companies. But clearly those are concerns, and maybe in some of the things my co-panelists will talk about, I think we'll be able to address that. So in terms of interest of time, maybe I will move rapidly, and I guess you'll call whoever you need to call. Right. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Mr. Gupta. And I'd like to now invite our very special guest for this session, Shri B.B. Smain, the Honorable Secretary, Ministry of MSME, to address the gathering here. Let's all once again please welcome him with a round of applause.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Gupta, all the dignitaries on the dais, all the esteemed participants. I am extremely pleased to participate in this session on financial inclusion. In the ministry, we run a program called Champions, in which we take in all the issues which MSMEs write in to us, and we take it up with banks, take it up with other institutions, try to solve it. We recently took out a statistics, it's almost 70% which is credit related and 30% is technology related. So this kind of gave us the major factors on which both the ministry and the organizations associated with should naturally be concentrating far higher. I mean, obviously everything has to be given its own due importance, but far higher in the realm of credit, in the realm of technology. I must congratulate Ashokumar for organizing such a grand function on a topic of relevance. Indian MSMEs are obviously capable of being global. All that is required for MSME is to tap their full potential, is an enabling environment. You'll all agree with me that a suitably enabled environment is possible only if all stakeholders work together towards a common goal. In this context, the complementary roles of the government and the MSME sector cannot be denied. The pandemic and its aftermath did affect MSMEs adversely. The two most important parameters, as I discussed, were finance and technology. This is what our Champions portal reflects. In this backdrop, the theme of this session assumes paramount importance. The announcements of Budget 22-23 address issues in this context. For instance, the budget has proposed to provide Rs 2 lakh crore additional credit under CGTMSE. This will have a far-reaching impact in terms of availability of credit to MSCs and also with regard to the employment being generated by them. I would like to report that this year CGTMSE incidentally is doing the much better than any earlier year, something which had, I think, a business of about 18,000 crore before 3 to 4 years. This year is expected to touch 50,000 crore. So even in a post-COVID kind of a phase, I think a lot of credit is being taken, a lot of guarantees are being issued. And with this particular budget declaration, we are definitely hopeful that whatever has been declared in the budget for 2 lakh crore additional credit and the required fund infusion will definitely have a far-reaching impact. I would also like to tell a little bit about the Udyam. Mr. Gupta talked about linking and interoperability and other things. Udyam is already doing that. To some extent, it is already linked to GSTN. It's already linked to the PAN. And that way, I think for the first time in this country, we are developing a very, very verified database. We have had a lot of databases, many obviously based on sample surveys and other this thing, but this is doing well. At this point of time, it's almost 76 lakhs, that is 7.6 million. It might not sound as impressive, let us say, as the 2016 figure of 6.3 crore. But the fact here is that every day we are getting 20,000 entries. Almost per week data we have taken is about a lakh, 100,000. It is increasing. And this particular data we have started analyzing because this is the second year of Udyam. What it is enabling us is also to compare the data regarding the growth patterns, the turnover patterns, the MSMEs which registered last year, how they are doing this year. Now, these are the kind of a thing I think which over a particular period, once this grows to a very, already it's a very healthy data, but it grows to maybe 2 crore, 3 crore, maybe 20, 30 million. This will start us giving us exceptional, I think, indications on how the way the policies should actually be governed in this country. Another very noteworthy announcement is the additional 50,000 crore earmarked for the hospitality and related sector with ECG LGS. MSMEs in these sectors have been particularly affected during the pandemic, and this announcement is definitely a welcome initiative. Besides this, the applicability of both ECLGS and CGSSD has been extended now by a year till 31st March 23. The budget has also announced the integration. This is what Mr. Gupta was talking about. There is another announcement also took place in budget. If you look at it, which talks about linking Udyam with other things like e-Shram and other factors. Udayam portal with several other portals like Ministry of Labor's e-Shram, Ministry of Skill Development's ASIM. I am confident that such an integration will not only ensure that more and more number of MSMEs come under the formal ambit, but also their credit accessibility will be facilitated. Needless to say, there will be employer and employee mapping, which will help in recruitment and employment generation. A recent noteworthy initiative of my ministry in terms of financial inclusion has been the release of MSME RuPay card last week. We are hopeful that a large number of MSMEs will gain from these initiatives, especially for paying their utilities. I would also like to tell about the initial response which is happening in the field of SRI fund. This is a fund, as you know, which was announced in 2020. NSIC has created a special purpose vehicle. Just started doing it. The initial, I think, response is quite good. It's quite positive. And one particular felt need which has been there for a very long time, that equity infusion into MSMEs. There has to be some kind of fund. The ultimate target is, of course, to create a fund of 50,000 crore on a mother-daughter kind of a setup. But initial responses, we are finding it quite good, and I am quite sure the next year it will do far better. An important component of a successful financial inclusion initiatives is the need for awareness of financial literacy. We are working towards integrating that in our schemes and programs and creating awareness. Taking this forward, recently we have been organizing MSME conclaves on a regional basis. This is a new effort which is happening from the ministry to create regional basis, to go to districts, to go to different states, and maybe carry our message to our clientele. I would call upon all stakeholders present here to come forth and work towards betterment of MSMEs. My best wishes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ashokumar Gupta, General Manager, MSME and Mid Corporate Credit Division, Punjab National Bank, is our next speaker. Let's welcome him.
Good afternoon, everyone. Respected dignitaries on the stage and ladies and gentlemen present in this hall. And I would like to, in view of shortage of time, I would like to brief upon certain points only through which we can bring more MSMEs into formal segment. So much has been talked about MSMEs since morning regarding their importance, their contribution in GDP, their contribution in export, in terms of employment generation, etc., etc. But how still more than 90% of MSMEs are in informal sector. They are not having formal access to the finance because of many reasons. May it be a difficulty in maintaining the records, technological upgradation, or very small scale of operation. So in the recent past, during this pandemic time, government has taken various steps to provide support to MSMEs, not only to continue their operations, but for meeting their operational expenses also. Like in emergency credit guarantee scheme, the government has come out with various versions, that is GECL 1, 2, 3, 4, and thereafter extension. And date has also, it keeps on extending. Now it is available up to 31st of March 2023. Government has also come out with credit guarantee scheme for subordinated debt, under which finance is made available to the promoters of stress units for infusion as equity in the business to come out to the stress. Beside this, there are various other schemes like Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Employment Generation Program, Stand Up India scheme. So various initiatives have been taken by the government in the recent past, and the regulator also has introduced resolution framework. Earlier it was resolution framework 1 and resolution framework 2 thereafter. So it provides a lot of relief to those units which are not having sufficient cash flows during the pandemic time, and bank has provided them not only funded interest term loans, additional facilities, but also extended their repayment period in terms of the guidelines. So to bring those units, those small entrepreneurs who are not there in the formal segment, 2-3 measures which are very important and which banks are taking. One is co-lending. So the RBI has come out with a new version of co-origination, that is co-lending, through which we can reach to the to those entrepreneurs where it is difficult for the banks to lend. Bank can collaborate, bank can tie up with not only with NBFCs but microfinance institutions also, wherein bank can provide 80% of the finance and 20% will be contributed by the NBFCs or MFIs. So each bank is doing these partnerships and lending under co-lending arrangements. The benefit of this co-lending arrangement is under two segments. One is pricing of the loan, which used to be very high in case of small borrowers. It is exorbitant, that is in the range of 20 to 30%, but after introduction of this co-lending, the blended price comes in the range of 12 to 15% for the ultimate borrower, which is the main purpose of this co-lending. And the second thing, that it is difficult for the banks to lend in faraway places because of human resources or many other reasons, but these NBFCs and MFIs can reach to those borrowers not in on sourcing of the loans, but also they can effectively handle the collection mechanism also. So banks are going in a big way under this co-lending arrangement. Secondly, we can promote cash flow based lending. So till now, the banks are engaging themselves, assessing the limits only through traditional methods, but now we are more relying on the cash flow based lending, which includes the alternate data, which includes the assessment on the basis of GST returns, and we have floated certain schemes also, wherein absolutely there is no requirement to provide any financial statements, including balance sheet, to the bank, and the limit is assessed purely on the basis of GST return or some alternate data. Thirdly, bank can promote digital lending, which nowadays under each reform agenda also, each bank is pushing hard to provide digital lending to the customers, so that the customers need not to come to the branches. And we at Punjab National Bank has also launched certain products wherein the customer can themselves go to the portal, fill certain informations, and can get the sanction within 5 minutes only, without any uploading of the documents or without any need to visit the branch. And it is all mechanical, no manual intervention is required in this process. So, beside this, bank has taken various other steps to provide much needed relief to the MSME segments, which include supply chain financing scheme. Bank is also active on the trades platform. Punjab National Bank is also onboarded on all 3 platforms available for discounting of trades receivables. And we are promoting, we are also engaging with various fintech companies under the tie-up arrangements, both in the segment of construction equipments, commercial vehicle segment, and other areas where bank is in isolation, bank is unable to finance, but in partnership with fintech companies or the other original manufacturers, bank can provide finance to ultimate borrowers effectively. So what is required to be done going forward? Though various policies are in place, various government supports are in place, and each bank is having much of the products suitably needed to the various segments of the MSME. But finally, empathy is required toward this segment. Awareness is required to be created among masses about the bank's products and policies, and we need empathy to handhold the borrowers, particularly in the micro segment, which is more than 90% of the total MSME segment. So if we create awareness and provide handholding to these customers, I am quite hopeful that we can bring at least a good number of MSME borrowers from informal to formal segment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Mr. Arup Kumar, Chief General Manager, SIDBI Foundation for Microcredit, is next.
Thank you. Dignitaries on the dais and ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here in this event, more so talking on financial inclusion session. In fact, this is a very thoughtful inclusion in whatever Ashokumar is doing, talking about MSMEs push to growth side and rebouncing. I was initially wondering what exactly financial inclusion topic is doing in this. And I was also wondering because in earlier events of Ashokumar, wherever I have participated, the participants are MSMEs. Financial inclusion space is completely different world altogether. I'm not very sure, but then my guess is majority of you are not exposed to that space. This is the space which briefly touched about the MFIs cater to, the livelihood space, micro entrepreneurship in missing middle segment, which is much different than the formal MSMEs which we have been talking about and generally we talk about. SIDBI as an apex institution for MSMEs, we have been since beginning, since inception, we have been trying to do gap interventions in the entire ecosystem of MSME wherever we found since early 90s, in 1990 we came into being. We have been trying to understand the gaps for the sector, for the ecosystem as a whole, and we have been trying to do interventions. Many of the interventions, they have grown to a level which is now being done by all. Trades he talked about. For receivable finance of MSMEs, we had launched bill discount scheme in 90s, which has now taken a shape of national program of trades. Similar engagements have been there in terms of guarantee program with the help of Ministry of MSME, venture capital company way back in 90s we had set up, still continuing as SVCL. So for enterprise creation, whatever was required to be done in terms of need assessment we used to do, and we used to partner with others. Even Msme, I remember with DNB that was set up for SME focused rating agency, for SME focused ARC. So many institutions we tried setting up to take care of the needs. But then financial inclusion space is a very different space. We being apex institution for the MSME and MSME sector, as such the canvas is so wide and so varied. We are talking about small and medium enterprises on this side. On the other side, it is those poor bottom of the pyramid segment which don't have access to even 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 loan to carry out their livelihood activities. Way back in 90s, mid-90s, when the banks, they'll be sharing their experience in this space. Government started with SHG bank linkage programs so as to help those poor. We realized that the bank branches, then Madam talked about today, 1,17,000 bank branches in the country. That time it was around 68,000. And we felt that it would not be enough to take care of the needs of the poor. And we set up the movement for MFIs. We converted the NGOs working in the with the rural poor, giving them capacity building support and grant support and equity support and loan support. We tried enabling them, and today more than 40% of the credit is being given by these MFIs. The MFIs today, 9 SFBs out of 10 SFBs initially set up were supported by us as MFIs, and then they have graduated. Bandhan Bank, the universal bank, the first loan they got as NGO MFI was that. Why I am talking to you? Because most of you might be thinking that this is not relevant to your area of operations as MSME. For any sustainable development, and especially the aspirational growth we have in our mind, the orbital shift we want to have in the growth trajectory of this country. Inclusive development is a must. Without that, it cannot be a sustainable development. You all are already wealth creator, contributing to the country's growth. You are employment generator. At the same time, once you come to know about this segment also, probably in your scheme of things, these would start fitting in. We have been trying to do through MFIs, we have been, after creating MFIs, we have been giving support to them, financial support loans, so that they can further on lend to MFI, micro borrowers through group formation. But then see what is happening. When I talked about SHG, when I talked about JLG, SHG is self-help groups, JLG is joint liability group on the basis of some prompt for me to finish early? No, okay. So, these were all endeavors of all of us to somehow support those bottom of the pyramid in their livelihood and micro enterprise activity. Since we did not have the wherewithals as a bank, as a institution and others also, even government, we started getting the comfort of groups, so that in group, the group dynamics plays a very different role from both the sides, giving comfort to the lender, giving comfort to the person who wants to do something. So that was the movement. SHG, the group started forming. Grameen Bank, you would have heard at least about Muhammad Yunus of Bangladesh. On that model, many of the MFIs, this joint liability group, but ultimately what is happening? These were group formations to aid those aspirations of those poor who wanted 10,000, 15,000, 30,000 to do something and become micro entrepreneur. That has been catered to now very, very fairly. Around 2,60,000 crore is going to this segment today. Another 1 lakh crore from the SHG side. So this is a fairly stable segment. Now is the time that we need to, with the advancements in technology, with the advancements and development of the ecosystem, is the time that we should be thinking about which way to support them individually. This is a time to support the graduation of those entities. Towards that, convergence of all the efforts of all the stakeholders, whether for financial literacy, whether for rating models and data analytics and all those things, or on the other side, lenders. Everywhere we need to bring we need to have a framework to bring convergence in the efforts, so as to take care of those people if they prosper. When globalization was seen as a threat, I remember in 90s, I used to listen to people in similar programs that they were saying that this is an opportunity for us, because when globalization happens, down the line in the value chain, the MSMEs would prosper. I would say today, for you MSMEs, those people, if we are able to support through some of the programs, maybe if time permitting, I'll elaborate a bit, they can become your junior partners. You can gain from them while supporting them and supporting to the national cause. At the same time, making it a commercial viable proposition where they become your part of the value chain. Today, some of the big corporates, what we have been doing is what I talked about. Today, what we are trying to do is this: the individual enterprise promotion in the missing middle segment, those who have aspirations to grow beyond group support, those who have aspirations without this also any experience to have something, and they need a loan of 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 3 lakh, 4 lakh. In that, it is called a missing middle segment for a reason that lenders are not active in this space. They don't want to give loans in this range for a reason that this is considered to be risky. Collateral security, they are not able to give, and RBI also doesn't allow that to be taken for that segment. So lenders are not comfortable. Through MFI segment, initially the rate of loan they used to get from informal money lenders was to the range of 120% per annum. over a period of time from 60%, 50%, 30% for the last 10 years, some of you at least who observe these things, they know that it has stagnated at 24 to 26%. Today, if you come to know about that 22, 24, 26%, you will say we can't survive, but they are surviving. The program we are running called Prayas is through partnership model, where we initially started with not-for-profit institution, where we used to give resource support to them, use their network, the way he was talking about co-lending. It's somewhat different. Co-origination, co-lending is something different. What we are trying to do is, we are trying to give support to micro enterprise for a loan requirement of 1 lakh, 5 lakh through these partner institutions. How you fit into, in case someone, the next segment we covered was from not for profit to profit NBFCs and MFIs, and today we have gone further to tap those segments who are in the value chain of corporates like Big Basket, Urban Clap, delivery partners and other requirements like even Patanjali has come. So those entities also, you people also, if you see in your value chain those segments who would need some money in this range to be on their own, to run their things, we are making you as our partners, and through that partnership we are reaching out to them, extending the loans to them. This is called Prayas program, partnership program of SIDBI. But this is not just this, we are trying even with the SRLMs, the SHG programs, the graduating ones. Some of you might be knowing World Bank, IFC, all of them, they are working on this. Which way to support? Madam Swarupa talked about women entrepreneurship. Stand Up India program, which we were the nodal agency along with NABARD, that envisaged this only 2 women entrepreneurship loan per branch. That is what Government of India had come up with 3-4 years back. That has not happened much there. Stand Up India portal, which we are running, we know the status of that. But at the same time, we can join hands further with the institute ma'am is heading, and we can do things which would be really bringing the bottom of the pyramid in this segment. I just thought of sharing these things. Most of this would be probably foreign to you. Most of this may not be very much of interest to you. But I wanted you to get exposed to this area also. And we are open, we are willing to partner with any institution, any corporate which touches this segment and is willing to do something for them. Not as a just commercial activity, as a social and development activity also. I would not take much time. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Arup Kumar. Mr. M. Paramsivam, Chief General Manager, Canara Bank, is the next speaker. Let's welcome him.
Respected dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to all of you. At the outset, I express my gratitude to Ashokumar for giving me this opportunity. We are the 3rd largest public sector bank in the country, who is having 9,800 branches spread over the entire length and breadth of the country. That helps us in having the financial inclusion for all MSMEs together. To drive the MSME sector, our bank has devised specialized MSME branches in 235 locations, identified locations where potential is available to cater to the needs of MSME units. Apart from that, 115 MSME Sulabs who will deal only in MSME lending, hassle-free processing, follow-up, documentation, everything happens in a single place in those centers. So that has facilitated the bank to grow beyond the industry level as far as MSME is concerned. Since inception, we are focusing on RAM sector, and more focus is given for MSME is concerned. MSME is always a commercial viable option available for the banks. Bank has surveyed the unit centers, and more than 25 area specific schemes have been developed by the bank and being implemented. As sir told, bank has changed its method of lending from turnover method to cash flow method, which is more applicable on today's requirements. We are very active in TREDS platform. To all the eligible customers under credit guarantee schemes, we have given, even without the application of the customer, we have given the sanctions and made customers to enable the customers to avail the limits. Apart from the government schemes, bank is also floating its own COVID scheme also to help the MSME customers to come out of the troubles. Unless we participate in Mudra schemes, Swanidhi schemes, and all the government schemes, the inclusive growth cannot happen at all. That is the focus area for our bank is concerned. We have also followed up with the technology partners, fintech companies for co-lending, and it is going in a greater way. We are with you. We are always there to support the MSME. At this juncture, I request all the participants present here to bank with us. We are always there for you to learn, to support the MSMEs, to take the country to greater heights. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Avnish Jain, Head of Transaction Banking at IndusInd Bank, will speak now.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's been a long day, long session. So, first of all, I would like to thank SHM for conducting this fantastic seminar and also facilitating all the MSME partners who have done a fantastic work. I represent IndusInd Bank. We are one of the top private sector banks in India, and we operate on a little different model that MSME, we focus on micro through our wing called as BFL, which is one of the largest microfinance company. On the SME space, we have two divisions catering from various segments and size. Various form of products our friends have already spoken about. So all banks are trying to make an attempt to do fintech partnerships, co-lending space activities, and also trying to help MSME. As we are already saying, 40% of our business in India happens through MSME. A majority of the employment today has been generated through MSME. Obviously, this is the place. This seminar even brings more focus that the boost is definitely going to come through MSME. The corporates are for different aspects, and MSME is basically to take care of the Indian economy boost. Since I belong to transaction banking, I would not talk too much on the lending, but try to harp a little bit more on the aspects of the costing which comes into place, which sir was talking about. The transaction cost. Pandemic has actually changed the entire transaction model when it comes to domestic business. If I can just relate to what is happening with Russia and Ukraine, with so many sanctions coming in. So I'm just trying to divert the topic, not to keep it on the finance side, so as to give you an aspect how we are going to have a boost. If you see, so many sanctions coming in Russia is actually people talking about that their economy is going to crash, the rate of interest has gone up to 20%, and their banking system may collapse because the SWIFTs of a lot of banks have been blocked. And most of us, I understand sir was talking about exports, so I understand a lot of us are into import and export, and would understand that there is money which flows out of India, which comes out from India, goes out of India and comes to India, and the model that is used is a standard which is called as SWIFT. And now, you know, very interesting thing, one of the WhatsApp group of what I was reading is that India has a very big advantage because India thought ahead, and NPCI played a very important role to build a concept called as UPI. The transfer of money is 7 seconds, 5 seconds, and this is what? Yes, sir. So sir is saying 3 seconds. So that's this lightning speed we are talking about. And the cost earlier when you used to go to the branch for doing an RTGS NEFT, there was a charge. Now it's free. So you know, banks, including government, everybody is trying to partner and trying to help everybody, especially the MSME space, to, you know, reduce their cost and add to the bottom line, which is going to be very important. Now, just to relate, I will say, we have been talking that banks are traditionally, as we fall under the regulator domain and a lot of regulations that we have to follow. And typically for MSMEs who are growing, we traditionally used to look at balance sheets. But now there are various modes which are devised. Sir also spoke, everybody has been speaking, that cash flow becomes very important. And with GST coming into place, it's even more important because now whether you are importing, you're exporting, or even you're doing domestic, everybody is at par. So there is no difference. So MSME, how they will gain an advantage is everything gets recorded. It gives a history to the bank to create a better decisioning. And I'm sure with rating agencies also partnering, you know, there is definitely going to be some form of platform which will be created for MSMEs, where there will be some other different form of ratings which will be done for them. And that will also help banks to take a decision maybe on a sectoral basis or a segment basis or a industry basis or a category basis. So it's an evolving market. We are also learning from you guys. We are also learning from regulators. We are learning from our peers. And we are also trying to develop a lot of products. One product which I just want to highlight, which I thought would be very prominent from the space that we are talking about, which is not typically micro, but I will talk about SME, is a GST OD product. I think sir from PNB also spoke about that product. But this is some product which is, you know, very, very advantageous when it comes to our SME partners, because we understand that the balance sheet is not going to support. But what is going to support is your throughput. And that is where the entire assessment belongs. You'd give 1 year GST and we extend credit. This is as simple as, and it is fully automated. Decisioning time is not 5 minutes, obviously, sir. I'm sorry, but we take about 1 day for decisioning, and it's very simple to disburse. So this is something where we can partner into. But definitely, just to end the matter, I would like to say every cost save is what is going to add to the bottom line. So we need to be very, very active on the digital side and try and upgrade ourselves on all the digital platforms which are being offered, from which and where we are banking into. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Joining us virtually is Mr. Kamdesh Gandhi, Founder, Chairman and MD of MAS Financial Services Limited. I'll request him to speak to all of us now.
Thank you. Respected dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon to all of you. To be honest, I have nothing more to add to what all the distinguished speakers shared with all of you. But I'm very happy to share that the model which we have been following as NBFCs, just to start with, I represent MAS Financial Services Limited, which is predominantly into MSME financing, and we representing the NBFC industry, I think we have always been on the forefront as far as serving this micro entrepreneurs is concerned. Because when we talk about MSME, if we do not talk about micro entrepreneurs, we are not covering the whole sector, where more than 80% of the entrepreneurs belong to the micro enterprises group. I think serving them and giving them the right kind of financial services is of paramount importance. And we take pride in being catalyst in the financial inclusion program of this country, and thereby giving our contribution to this economic development and growth. As an industry also, the FIDC, that is industry body of financial NBFCs, non-banking financial companies, we also are very agile and represent the cause of all these micro entrepreneurs from time to time to the policymakers and the regulators, so as to create an enabling situation for them to grow. See, when we talk about MSME industry, we are talking about the most important sector, which is not only responsible for our short-term goal of a $5 trillion economy, but much more beyond that. And hence at every forum, the point of discussion is are we doing enough? Given the magnitude and given the scale of this industry and scale of our country, we need a multi-pronged approach. And this is a task to be worked upon and can't be worked out. And so coming to the focus on micro entrepreneurs, we always feel that the exclusion of these micro entrepreneurs from the main financial stream is the function of informality. Now, this is technically correct, but practically informality of this micro entrepreneurs is not always by choice. We need enabling rules, regulations, and rather lucrative rules and regulations and government policies to bring them under the formal stream, so as to enable them to get the credit the way they deserve. I think lot has been done very genuinely and honestly by various programs of the government. But at the same time, the micro entrepreneurs also will have to come forward to take the advantage of the same, which will happen, as discussed by one of the speaker, through a better financial literacy program. So the efforts in that direction will also play a very important role in bringing them into the main financial stream. The MSME entrepreneurs will have to resolve to sharpen their financial understanding. Let me tell you that we are talking about the availability of funds to the micro entrepreneurs and MSME sector. But the real test of the lending will be the quality of the portfolio at the end of the day the lender will have to handle, given the credit potentiality and given the scale, that are we in a position to create a win-win situation both for the lenders and for the borrowers, for which MSME, it is incumbent on MSME entrepreneurs to have the financial understanding and the financial discipline. So as to, I always cherish that MSME should not demand credit, they should command credit. Because when we talk about as a lender supporting an MSME industry, I think supporting is not an appropriate word. It is mutual. MSME is a very big opportunity for each and every lender. And for every good asset, there is always money available. So if these micro entrepreneurs are helped through an enabling regulations, policies, through financial literacies, and we should work in the direction that they don't only demand credit, but they command credit by becoming the strongest asset on the balance sheet of the lender. So by doing this, they will not only get credit, but they will get credit at a very competitive rate. I still remember that we have been, as NBFCs, we have been dealing with these micro entrepreneurs since 2000. And I'm very happy to see that the cash flow based assessment is being now validated by all the lenders. I still recollect that when we used to go to the bankers with this type of assessment and give this type of loans as asset to raise money, there was a lot of reluctance on the part of the bankers to understand that. So we have come a long way from that situation, whereby these borrowers are considered to be credit worthy, and the ones like us, that is especially the NBFCs and the MFIs who are serving to them, their role is well recognized, be it the latest NBFCs being the distributors and banks having the balance sheet forte will be the right combination to serve this class of the society. The focus of the policymakers and the regulations on the financial sector providing credit to this will also go a long way. The schemes like CGT, MSE, ECLGS, co-lending are the steps in the right direction. But I think still a lot has to be done from time to time. And not to forget the refinance options that we get from SIDBI from time to time. But there's lot has to be done in order to capture the real potential of this sector. Well, as I said, it was a challenge for me to pick up be repetitive. So I will end on an optimistic note that with the confidence that the MSME led by the growth and development of this nation. But it is incumbent on all the stakeholders to create an enabling environment for this sector and achieve our objective of a sustained economic growth, as I mentioned earlier, not only the short-term $5 trillion economic target, but on much more than that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gandhi. And last but not the least, I'd like to now request Shri B. Gopalakrishna Samaga, Deputy General Manager and National Head of Karnataka Bank, to speak to all of us.
Very good afternoon to all the dignitaries on the dais and off the dais. It is a great honor for our bank to receive the prestigious 8th MSME Excellence Awards instituted by SHM, which is the country's oldest apex chamber. In the past also, we had received many awards from this SHM organization. Our special appreciation and thanks to all the stakeholders who have made us honored with these prestigious awards from time to time. Now I would like to throw light on today's given topic, that is more power to the financial inclusion. Government of India and Reserve Bank of India have been making concerted effort to promote financial inclusion as one of the important national objectives of the country. Some of the major efforts made in the last 5 decades include nationalization of the banks, building up of robust branch network of scheduled commercial banks, cooperative and regional rural banks, introduction of mandatory priority sector lending targets, lead bank scheme, formation of self-help group, permitting business correspondent to be appointed by banks to provide doorstep delivery of the banking services. The fundamental objective of all these initiatives is to reach the large section of the hitherto financially excluded Indian population. Recent development already discussed are permission to tie up co-lending arrangement with fintech companies to reach the underserved sector of the sector of the economy. Why financial inclusion is required in India? Financial inclusion broadens the resource base of the financial system by developing a culture of saving among large segment of rural population and plays its own role in the process of economic development. Further, by bringing low-income groups within the perimeter of formal banking sector, financial inclusion protects their financial wealth, other resources in exigent circumstances. Financial inclusion also mitigates the exploitation of vulnerable section by the private money lenders by facilitating easy access to the formal credit. If you see the status of financial inclusion in India, a strong leadership is perquisite to drive financial inclusion in mission mode. Indian policy making has shown steady resolve for inclusive growth, which culminated in the National Mission for Financial Inclusion, namely the Pradhana Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana scheme. Launched in August 2014, it was a watershed in the financial inclusion movement in the country. The program leverages on the existing large banking network and technological innovation to provide every household with access to basic financial services, thereby bridging the gap in the coverage of banking facilities. MSMEs are considered the engine of the growth of the Indian economy. A number of initiatives have been undertaken for facilitating credit offtake in this sector. Now, coming to the steps taken by RBI for financial inclusion, RBI has adopted a bank-led model to deepen financial inclusion. The banks were mandated to open branches nationwide, especially in underbanked pockets, which led to considerable increase in bank branches. To widen the financial inclusion, RBI has issued differentiated banking license, small banks, small finance banks, payment banks in 2015. The objective of setting up of small bank finance was to further inclusion by provision of a saving vehicle and supply of credit to small business units, small and marginal farmers, micro and small industries, and other unorganized sector entities through high technology, low cost operation. Payments bank have been set up to provide small saving accounts, payments, remittance service to migrant labor workforce, low income household, small businesses, and other unorganized sector entities and other users. Now, coming to the way forward, if you see the financial inclusion is a crucial for wider, inclusive, and sustainable growth. Access to finance has always been considered as one of the vital parameters of economic growth, and therefore, the promotion of an inclusive financial system is an area of policy thrust and priority. Ease of credit access, particularly to micro, small and medium enterprises, small and marginal farmers, women and micro credit segment remain a policy priority for policy makers. Recent revision in private sector lending guidelines with a framework to encourage flow of credit to identified credit deficient districts across the country, inclusion of startups, emphasis on health, infrastructure, and renewable energy, etc., are expected to mitigate regional disparities in deployment of credit and ensure greater credit flow to the targeted sectors. I would like to conclude my session by stating a quote from a renowned Indonesian economist, Ms. Mulayani Indrawati. She says, financial inclusion matters not only because it promotes growth, but because it helps ensure prosperity is widely shared. Access to financial services plays a critical role in lifting people out of poverty, in empowering women, and in helping governments deliver services to their people. I would like to thank Ashokumar for inviting our bank for this prestigious event and for giving an opportunity to speak few words on more power to the financial inclusion. Thank you, one and all.
Well, thank you very much, sir. And I'll now once again request you, Mr. Avinash Gupta, to give your remarks and conclude this session. Also propose thanks to all of them. We are being told the minister is on his way and will be here with us any moment now.
Right, thanks. So thank you, everybody. I guess only, as we say, only a brave person stands between somebody and lunch. So you'll have to wait for some more time, I guess. I promised you that twice. It was supposed to be after the last session. Now it's after this session and the minister. So please, thanks for your patience and do hold on to where you're sitting. So thank you on behalf of, Ashokumar, to all the panelists. Thank you guys for a very patient hearing. I mean, my life before I joined Dun & Bradstreet was a banker, but mostly different kind of banking. I did mostly in private equity investment banking. So this is something I learn every day as well. And there are lots of new things happening. And clearly, I think I was very heartened to hear twice today, and I hope it really happens. I think the gentleman from NSIC talked about the equity fund of 15,000 crores, and then the secretary mentioned in his remarks as well. And God hope it does happen, because, I think the need of the hour is equity. And when equity comes, then debt follows much more easily, we all know. So I think the problems of MSMEs, as we all know, are very similar. The gentleman from BMW in the morning talked about the German SME network and system, and we know how robust that has been, given support, giving financing, given the links they have with their customers and the ecosystem. and I hope that evolves here as well. So I think lots of good learnings, I think lots of feedback, always appreciated, as all the panelists said, and hopefully the products, the linkages, the fintech, the ecosystem, the banks can really help credit become more available at the right price, as Mr. Gandhi said from Ahmedabad as well, and it really goes beyond that $5 trillion parameter which the country has set for itself, and hopefully it's a journey to be had over the longer term. So thank you. With that, I'll conclude this session. Thank you again, and just hold on for, I guess, guidance from the hostess. Thank you. Do we keep sitting up? We're done. We're done here?
Yes, the session is done. Well, thank you, everyone. We conclude this session. I'll request our speakers to please take a seat in the audience. The Honorable Minister, like I said, we are being told is on his way, will be here at the venue any moment. There was a cabinet meeting that he was a part of, which was in fact the reason for the entire delay. I'm told that he will be here any moment. Now, please stay with us.